Welcome everyone. Is your marriage to a trauma survivor more tumultuous than a roller coaster ride? If this is you, I want you to listen to this video where I am going to talk through the 5 steps that I took and that other wives that I have talked to are taking in order to calm the conflict in their tumultuous relationships. But before we get to those 5 tips, it's really important for you to understand how someone with a history of childhood trauma reacts to certain cues and triggers. One of the effects of trauma is that the survivor ends up being in a constant state of what is called hypervigilance, and that means that they are constantly looking around for signs of danger. Because they're so hyper alert to danger, things that are normal responses for you in a marriage may be very triggering and cause them to feel threatened and therefore very defensive. They would respond to a normal request with the fight, flight, or freeze responses that we would respond to if we were being chased by a bear in real danger. So when you as the spouse experience these fight, flight, or freeze responses, this causes a lot of distress for you, not understanding why they're reacting that way. And then your relationship turns into this cycle of defensiveness and distance that you just can't seem to break through. An example that I use is that you may just ask your husband if he can take out the garbage or if he could do the dishes tonight. And the response that you may feel is like you cheated on him. It's so extreme. And this is the type of responses that I'm talking about that can be so abnormal that someone who doesn't have a trauma history just doesn't understand. What complicates the issue even further is that your husband is responding this way in a completely subconscious state. He does not know that this is happening to him, and he has no ways of being able to express this or put words to it. So it really leaves the wife to making those interpretations for themselves. Once you understand what is going on behind the scenes of their brain, it can make it a lot easier and actually be very liberating for you to be able to discern the difference between when there was a wrong that you need to make right, or when your husband is responding in ways that he used as survival mechanisms, but they are no longer serving him and they are not your fault. So before we get to those 5 steps that I promised, I want to tell you a little bit about my story. My story started 8 years ago when I was in a struggling marriage. I had a stepdaughter and a toddler son, and I was seeing things in my marriage I just did not understand. Many of the behaviors and responses that I was just referring to, I was experiencing, and I did not have any way to put those in context. It was only after my husband and I had a tragic incident that I decided I'd had enough. And at this point, when I was leaving him, this is when he was finally, for the first time, able to tell anyone that he had had a terrible history of childhood abuse at the hands of the church. At first, I was a little bit upset. I felt like I'd been lied to, that I knew that there was something under the surface that I just didn't understand. But then I slowly started to realize how difficult this secret is to tell for a trauma survivor. I started to do my research and understand more about trauma and how it affects relationships. And my husband and I have now been married 8 years, and we are hoping that others can receive benefit from our story, that we made it through this for a reason. And the reason is that we can help others get through the same things that we did. And I am absolutely 100% committed to helping other wives in this situation, helping you hopefully with techniques that I learned by trial and error. Now, I have tried everything, and I have also been interviewing several wives, and we have come up with a 5-step process for calming conflict in a relationship. And all you really need to do is pause. So PAUSE are the steps. So let's start with number 1, the P, and that is to first and foremost provide space and time. It is absolutely okay when you are starting to experience those negative emotions, those threatening responses, and the isolation and withdrawal with space and time. Don't assume that the emotions are due to you. Don't ask why until things have calmed down. There really isn't anything that you can do at this moment to get to the bottom of it until your husband is ready. The space that he needs may be much longer than you think. It may be hours, and in some cases it may be days. So let's talk about step number 2, and that is the A, and that is ask him if he needs you or if he needs more space to process the emotions that he's going through. Approach him, letting him know that you're there if he needs you, but avoid pressuring him to talk until he's ready. The 3rd step is the U, and this is when you will unlock your inner Sherlock and look for cues for when your husband is ready to talk. It is highly unlikely that your husband in this situation is going to come to you and say, okay, I thought through my emotions and I'm ready to talk. Most likely, you're going to have to use your wife instincts to look for those cues that you will see in your marriage when your husband has started to come out of feeling those strong emotions. In my case, it would look like my husband would come to the kitchen and start small talk, or when we were in bed together, he would put his hand on my shoulder or back. You're gonna get really good as a wife in identifying those non-verbal cues that your husband is ready to chat. The 4th step is the S, and that is to saddle up and seek solace from your support system. This waiting and space giving time can be very difficult. It's really emotional, especially at first, and you're sad and you're hurt and you feel blamed and you just don't know how to deal with it. So going to your support system, talking to a family or trusted family member or friend can really help you get through these times, distract you, laugh, listen to some music, just anything that will help you get through this time period. Now, the final step is the most important, and this is the E. Engage in a chat when the emotional storm has passed. Do not just pretend like nothing happened. Do not brush this off. It's important that you discuss with your husband how this time made you feel and talk with him about ways that can make it easier for you. So in my case, I would have a conversation with my husband that when he felt the need to go to the basement and get that space, if he could just tell me, hey, I have a headache or my back hurts and I just need some time alone, but it has nothing to do with you, that would have made the world of difference for me to give that time and space without taking it all out on myself. Now, remember to pause whenever you need it. You'll probably need to do this many times before you start seeing differences in the pattern of responses that you have been experiencing in the past. I really hope this has been helpful. I know that I would have done anything to have received this type of advice when I was in the midst of the trauma recovery process. Please check out my website for more information if you found this helpful. I am 100% committed to starting a movement for wives to break their silence, to not suffer alone, and creating a community where we can support each other. Thank you so much.